Happy birthday, sir, birthday. Happy late birthdays in the past. Happy future birthdays in the future. My name is Lime Green, and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast where we talk about NieR Automata. What is the Out of Time podcast? Who is Lime Green? Where are you? All valid questions, listener. Well, the Out of Time podcast is the podcast where you, yes, even you, listener, get to vote on games I should have played a long time ago, and I sit down and I play them in little chunks, and then I tell you about the games chunk by chunk, and you get a little first-hand experiences. And it's like you're kind of replaying the game for the first time all over again. Kind of, living through me, I guess. And I guess you can, play alongside me. Be like, wow, I've never heard that perspective before, I guess. I guess that's how I'm framing it. Also, at the end of every podcast episode now, I'm, throwing in, additional games that I just decide to also play alongside, little bonus games, like who knows what this one could be. Last time it was, I know the one time I talked about Gex. Last time it was Metal Gear Solid 2. And, check out last episode if you haven't checked out last episode. I'm not sure why you'd start with episode 3. So, last episode, if you need a refresher, last episode, the aliens who we thought had taken over the entire Earth, they were just decimated by these robots that they built. And the humanoid robots are like, haha, we'll take over the humans on the moon next. And I was like, what? Next episode is going to be crazy. And, this game loves the little cliffhangers. I say that as preparing you for the end of this episode. But they, these humanoid robots, they left in the middle of their boss fight, and that was the craziest thing to me. And then the base is like, hey, something, and I just completely forgot, because I put the game down after that, and I recorded the episode, and then I didn't play for forever. So, to be honest, after that, I forgot what I was supposed to be doing. I ran around for forever, and I think I ran from the resistance camp to Pascal's village, jumped in the hole a little bit. I was trying to follow the little mission marker, and it just kept leading me back to the vending machine, and I was like, alright, well, I'm not sure where it wants me to go, and I just kept going in circles, and but then I figured out, it was on me, of course, and you're supposed to, I don't know, I didn't see the option to go back up to the base. So I went up to the base, and they're they want a briefing on what you actually experienced during the boss fight. For some reason, I didn't think just the vending machines could take you to the base. I thought, they would just either a cutscene would happen, or you would get in your mechs and fly there. I don't know, I thought it would be more prodigious more of an event to get to the base. Anyway, you talk to the commander a bit, and then Pascal gets brought up, and the little pacifist forest machine village, and the commander's like, "What are you talking about? How can machines be nice? You gotta go investigate Pascal some more." And then I'm like, "All right, I'm all believing, machines can be nice. I'm taking the pacifist route as much as I can." And you go back to Pascal, and Pascal tells you about like this forest zone, which is like this dilapidated mall sort of deal. And I'll admit, uh, I'm not sure if this is gonna affect anything or not, but like I said, last episode, I believe it was, in the amusement park zone, I tried to avoid as many enemies as I could because I thought, since they were happy-go-lucky and they weren't attacking me, I didn't want to attack them because I thought this would affect one of my endings or something. And I said the same thing in Pascal's village, and I was upgrading one of my weapons, and I accidentally, it was an accident, attacked one of the Pascal's shopkeepers in the village, and I was like, oh geez, I didn't even know I could do that. I thought, we're all cool, which really begs the question, like, what happens if you just take out everyone in there? But you go to this forest zone, and it is really cool. Again, I really like the whole, like, aesthetic of almost like Pikmin, how everything's, like, ruined and, like, nature is taking its course, and you got little machines roaming, just saying, like, as 9S would say, like, almost random words, but then you, in the back of your head, you're thinking, is it random? Is it? And you kind of make your way up through it, and I believe at this point they're talking about, like, there's, like, a leader they're following, and it kind of turns into, like, a 2D, I guess, side scroller, and this is the amount of justification for this was I was like, okay, they're attacking me, I'm attacking back, no pacifist, this is genocide mode now. Also at this point, like, I fought my way all the way up, but I was like level 14 by the time I got to that. I felt like pacifism was limiting me, as some of the enemies were like, I'm guessing they were weaker enemies too. They were like a level higher than me, and that was no good. And it got to a point where 9S was also, I believe, somewhere around here. 2B almost calls 9S, what he wanted 2B to call him, Nines. She almost calls them Nines, which, she's letting, formalities take over, which is kind of interesting. Normally she's very business focused. But you get up to the top here, and there's just wave after wave of enemies. How do I approach this? I got into the boss, and then I died, and then I'm like, alright, well, I'll just retry. And then, like, attempt after attempt, I couldn't get back to get my body, and retrieve my stuff. Like, I kept getting worse. Like the swarms of robots just stopped me. So that was kind of like a wake up call to be like, okay, I gotta go level up. And I'll admit I'm not really a side quest kind of person. I kind of like rush into the next story beat. I like stories in video games. If there is a side quest I want to do, I'll do it. But, I'm not one who does like all the side quests. I do, ones that sound cool to me, but I'm trying to think of like the best way to say this. I don't want to do ones that make it sound like, oh man, I'm just out here grinding away for EXP. I just want to go, here, experience the story for what it has. It's not to say, side quests can't be, really good. I've had, really good side quests and stories before, but I don't want to get too lost in the side quest and then be like, oh man, what was I supposed to be doing, That, and you can be like, juice yourself up too much on side quests, and then you go back to the main game and then just like one shot everything. That's a worry of mine too. So I don't want to say I did a couple of side quests. I just I found like there's like a racing robot, and I raced him once, and then the second race was like kind of tough. So I'm like, I'll be back. And then there's one like an escort robot thing. It's like a bunch of dancing guys. And I'm like, oh, this will be easy. And then the robots that were attacking them were like level 30. Again, I was like level 14. And I was like, oh geez, I guess I'm coming back for this also. So I mostly just like wandered around and bought some random robots. Upgrade my stuff the best I could. Bought some health recovery stuff. Finally, it's time to retry that boss fight. You enter the room, and there's just a cradle. And inside the cradle, there's like a little robot head. And 9S is like, oh, I guess this is the king. And before you can do anything, another android comes down and like, spoiler, like Sephiroth dives into, I haven't played Final Fantasy VII either, but I know Sephiroth dives into this robot head and then just pierces it and then throws it aside, and you're like, what the heck, another Yorha unit, another android, and 2B's like, alright, well, whatever, we came here for that, and I guess it's all done, let's go. And then all of a sudden, ring, you're getting a little thing from command, and they're like, hey, actually, that unit is wanted. Can you just take out this android? It feels very like they're pushing an agenda. Like they're like, hey, just do our bidding, Like, I feel like I don't know. I felt like kind of conflicted about that. But while they're talking, saying you should take out this other android, this other android, A2 is their name. they're approaching me, you know, and I'm approaching them, and I'm not attacking. I was trying to still do the pacifist route, and I wanted to see if I could just do something different, like give them a hug or handshake or something, talk to them, talk it out, recruit them, or they recruit me. I don't know. But instead, 9S rushes into the battle. Then, ruins my whole pacifist run. Anyway, I finally did manage to beat her, and her life bar also, like Adam and Eve, they also did not deplete entirely. And, like, in that boss fight, I have to say, hey, that's pretty good use of just, like, video game, not aesthetics, not environments, but, like, UI, just, like, messing with the typical things you would see in a video game. You gotta fight the boss until their life bar drops entirely. I also want to say, I can't remember if it was in the first Adam boss fight, but if his life bar dropped all the way down to 0 or not. But I wonder if that's like a thing. If once your life bar hits 0, then you're like dead. It's like an Undertale type deal, and that's why the bosses keep running before, I guess, their life bar entirely runs out. Just like a overall complementary theme I'm noticing, I guess. Anyway, after the fight, the bunker calls us, and they're like, oh, well, you didn't catch that fugitive unit, at least you guys are safe. Still, I'm like, kind of like, I don't know whether to trust you guys or not. Like, we didn't know about that fugitive up until they're like 10 feet away from me, and then I think it's 9S who's like, hey, let's check out Pascal and see if they know anything about A2. And then we go to the robot village, and Pascal's like, well, we don't really know too much. We just kind of know A2's kind of like dangerous, but they've never come to the machine village, which I'm not really sure. I kind of think that A2's like on our side. Like, they were sent out for the same mission, more or less, but they have like different goals. But the resistance camp gives us a new mission, and it's like, alright, now guard these missiles that are gonna be loaded onto like this carrier. And it sounds like a side mission, if I'm being honest. And I'm like, okay, alright, whatever. And then you go there, and first off, it's like in this sunken city with like water strewn about. I'm all about the water, I guess. And like, it looks like a bomb hit the city. I'm really about, again, with the aesthetics, I'm not sure how they're managed to make each area both demolished and look very pleasing and very different from the last demolished world area, you know? But you hop from little demolished blocks to the next demolished block, and 9S is like, well, I hope we can wrap this up in time for me to go home and have a dinner and a bath. Remember the last episode, I think it was, when I said, isn't it kind of strange how androids sleep? This is also kind of throwing in more things, because afterwards Tubi's like, you don't you don't really need to bathe. And then 9S is like, well, don't you like that sensation? Sensation of feeling like you almost need to, like, almost being human. Now we're entering in that conversation. It's a very, very interesting. And then, the machines, again, the machines are showing signs of being human, which 9S doubts. But 2B is doubting, like, 9S's humanity, It's just a circle of doubts of humanity. So at first it starts off pretty easy. You think 9S is going to be in home time for his bath and dinner. And then, all of a sudden, like, this huge, like, drone comes out of nowhere, and you gotta fight that off with your little mechs. And in the back of my head, I was kind of thinking, oh man, there's probably gonna be another phase to this, right? I'm like, my skill level is like here. You can't see it, but it's pretty low. Like, what I think is tough is, like, I want to say low to medium to other people. And then what I think is easy, people are like, that was a cakewalk. They should probably make that harder. But once you defeat the drone, then all of a sudden, like, this huge, I describe it as like this this level of Super Mario Galaxy comes out of the ocean and, like, destroys the ship you're supposed to be protecting. And it's like, oh geez. And then all of a sudden it turns into, like, you're playing Super Mario Galaxy in the background, and in the front ground you're playing a bullet heck. And I felt like, how Super Smash Brothers competitive people say, oh man, there's a lot going on on the stage, and we gotta ban the stage. There's a lot there's a lot going on in these fights. Additionally, at times my thumb, like, it was getting, like, tired just being pointed in the direction in which you shoot for so long, because so the giant Super Mario Galaxy monstrosity comes out of the water, and you try and take it down, and then it's like, you didn't really do too much to it. And then 9S is like, well, let's hit it with these missiles and this missile reserve over here. And then that doesn't really too much to it. And I also have to point this out. When 9S leaves to, like, get the missiles later on, to hit them with another missile, I'm like, okay, you really gotta put me out of, like, 9S helping and like the additional fire, and then Pascal comes in, and I kept firing at Pascal, thinking Pascal was like one of the enemy little drones, because Pascal looked just like a little mechanized drone, and so it was like added difficulty. But eventually, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I started at level 14. Throughout the boss fight, I went up to level 22. How I eventually beat the boss fight, the entire boss fight, it was like a series of level ups, and every time you level up, your health refills, and I really use that to my advantage. I'll admit it. So every time my health would refill, I'd be like, all right, go, go, go. And I'll play like the best game of my life. Or at least I'll try to. And the shielding part was really tough, because you have to take off each part of the shield. But I think it's fair. I just wish there was like a way you could do it without, pointing directly at the thing you're trying to be pointing at, like a lock-on mechanic. Eventually, NieR shoots it with another rocket, and like everything like blows up, and then it's like, you wake up on the beaches, I guess, or rocks, and you're like, what happened? It's been like hours later, and nobody really knows where NieR is, if they're even still alive. Now I'm gonna say NieR is still alive. There's no doubt in my mind NieR is dead. I don't know too much about Drakengard or NieR, but I don't think this series would do something crazy like that. However, I will say, there's a bunch of Yorha units lying all around when 2B initially wakes up. So, who can say? Who can say? I don't think they will, but who can say? You can say probably, because you've probably played this game. But one more thing I want to mention before we wrap up the NieR section. I wanted to mention on the third phase of the boss fight, when NieR leaves to try and get the missile to fire, and eventually ends up defeating him, blowing him up. I believe it's like a voice, like 2B's internal monologue. I could be like completely off on this. It's either someone at the bunker or 2B's internal voice, like her android persona, and it tells her to label NieR as a deserter. And this also wraps back into the androids versus humanity portion, and that's kind of, it's all very interesting, really. This seems very philosophical and very fun and very nice to look at. Just that idea is, it really makes you think, because does NieR have the same dialogue appear in his head when he's flying away? Or is it louder in 2B's head? Or like more prominent because 2B is more driven for the mission and 9S is more lax? I don't know. But that's two bosses, the famous two boss role. And now we're going to be talking about a few games that I have played. And by that, I mean games I've played recently, like a year ago. And we're doing two of them today because I feel like this is like a good double pack type situation. These two games, they're linked in a strange way. And I got them both before the console. And there's a little hint I did to hint to one of them, at least. And I've played the other in a previous episode. Could you have guessed what the two games were? They're Cyberpunk 2077 and Mario Kart World. And I bought them both before the Switch 2 because, you gotta save up for the Switch 2. So I bought the games and stared at them and read the back of them before eventually playing them. Like a month I did that. I only ever did that also with I think I've told this on the channel. My mom got me a copy of Pokemon Crystal, but before that I just had a Game Boy Color. Now just turned the Game Boy on and off, just imagining what it would be like to play the game. I'd see the little logo, and that was kind of like the coolest thing, just imagining playing Pokemon for like a month while it was being delivered. Why is that hard to say? But what game should I start with? We'll start with Cyberpunk since that's kind of the closest equivalent to NieR with androids and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure at least one of you in the comments right now is going, Lime, why did you get Cyberpunk 2077? That's a bad game. Why do you even get a physical copy of Cyberpunk 2077? Why not even get digital? Well, first off, I got like a bazillion physical copies over there. I only try and get digital when there's no physical option. I just like the tactile, like feeling, what if they close down like the digital storefront? That's my big worry. Well, if you're going somewhere, and then you want to take your game with you, you can't do that with a digital game unless there's like online services. There's a whole thing. You got to download it. That's my thing. Plus, a lot of physical games come with manuals. And Cyberpunk did. Plus, the Switch 2, they were advertising, hey, Cyberpunk came all in one little cartridge. I had to give it up for Cyberpunk. Plus, I was really curious what all this talk was about Cyberpunk. They really pulled me in. I know before I've said I get kind of like frightened by like people hyping up a game, but I guess I get more entranced by it's in my contrarian nature to get kind of entranced by people saying, oh man, this this game is pretty bad. You know, I I kind of don't believe them, and I really want to check it out. That's why I kind of want to check out games like Mighty Number Nine and Balan Wonderland, because it's like, are they really that bad, or is people online just hyping it up to be that bad? You know, I don't think they're that bad. So I got Cyberpunk. So let me just address like the badness part since we're on that. I only experienced, I want to say like two, we'll say they're glitches. At, uh, really one like crazy one, and it was, I was, there's a lot of sneaking in this game, and I was sneaking up behind this guy, and he was like standing behind a counter. I grabbed him from behind and like slammed him onto the counter, and uh, the game didn't like that, and uh, he began like freaking out onto the counter, and like you could just see like his vertexes just spread all throughout. We're in like a shopping mall, spread throughout the entire mall slowly, and it was crazy. I've never seen anything like that. And as his vertexes spread throughout the mall, uh, the other guards there, they got alerted to my presence. uh, and slowly the game was like, uh-oh, this shouldn't be happening. And like besides that, there was no other real glitches that happened. But the game does have like a thing where it's like, if you encounter any glitches or like bugs or anything, you can like report it to CD Project Red. I've never had a game where you can just tell the devs. I thought, games just have that. And we kind of do have that, in the online society we have today. But that's kind of a neat button that's implemented. They're looking out for their uh, player base. You can't say they're not listening. Now we're going to transition from talking about the bugs and the glitches to things I really didn't care for and thought they could have done better. Uh, Starting off with the boss fights. And if you know what I'm talking about, maybe you haven't played the game or you're on the fence about playing it. I'd say this was my favorite game I've played in 2025. So there's my letter of recommendation to you. But getting into the boss fights, how Cyberpunk works is you like enter. We'll use the mall example again. You enter a mall and then you work your way through, either stealthily or guns blazing, literally. And then you get up to a boss, and then they put you in like a arena against this boss. And a lot of the times I felt underprepared against the bosses. And so, what do you do in situations where you're underprepared? You go out and you train. Cyber Cyberpunk puts not only like an arena around the boss fight itself, but an arena around like the whole premises in which the mission takes place. So I literally had to get really creative with a lot of my boss fights, which, yeah, it really pushed me to see it through, but I just didn't like that. One of the more memorable boss fights, I'll say, is spoiler, Oda, and his whole thing is he like turns invisible, and then you have to try and like track him down while he's running around and like attacking you, and then if you can't find him, he's like off in some corner healing up his injuries. It's both a very cool boss fight, but also very annoying. And you kind of have to like learn the layout of the entire map and learn where he's gonna be going and his whole attack style. Eventually, see, hold on. Here's my whole issue though. My initial plan was, go in, go pew 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 pew, use all my bullets, and then I would be down to nothing. Eventually, I got fed up because, I would use up all my bullets, and then you have like a little thing where you can like set him on fire, and like that does like little incremental damage over time, over like 4 seconds or something. And it's like, all right, but he's got to run off to some corner and heal. So eventually, I you, you can get a katana, and you can like. What I did was I hunted him down, and I just stood in one spot, and I just went whoosh, 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 for like forever until I won. And I think I had like some fire effect on it, so it was like katana damage, burn damage, and then he couldn't run away fast enough. Like in that instance, like it made me think out of the box. It's like use the katana with burn damage, yeah, but I can see people getting frustrated at not being able to leave. Well, Lime Green, did you even like this game? Sounds like you're being a little too negative on it. Well, I actually did love this game. I loved it a lot. Like I said before, it was my favorite game I played in 2025. What I loved about this game is it felt like so advanced is a easy way to say it. You could call a car to you. That blew my mind. I'm not sure like if other games could do that, but just the idea you could be like beep beep beep, and then a car just comes up to you, and just that functionality alone just blew my mind, because I use that for like all sorts of scenarios where you know you're in the middle of like a gunfight, and then you need a little cover, beep beep beep, and then your car comes up and then provides you some cover. You need a quick getaway, beep beep beep. Here comes your car. It's so cool, and just seeing it drive up. Not to mention, you can get in the car and it can drive you places, and whenever you want, you can take control. And that's kind of feeding into the fact that it's called Cyberpunk 2077. It takes place in the future. Hopefully not our future, but it feels very futuristic with its concepts and controls and everything. Uh, it has both a little fisticuffs and a little gunplay. But also it's got like a storyline that I didn't expect to be so enamored with. I chose, I believe, the devil ending because okay, hear me out. I so spoiler. The whole story of this game is like you get essentially like Johnny Silverhand's mind who everyone perceives to be like this really bad guy, and he shares your same mind through like this chip, and he's like, we gotta blow up this, corporation, and uh, at the same time, his chip is like going to take over your mind, and then uh, eventually he's going to become you, you know. And as the game progresses, you learn, Johnny, he's not as bad as everyone makes him out to be, you know. And my thinking was, because eventually you go to Arasaka, the place that Johnny tried to blow up originally, the big bad corporation, and then you meet up with like the sister of the leader of the corporation. She goes, "Oh, I can like take it over and help get Johnny out of your head at the same time." And so my thinking was, all right, so Johnny tried to do it, guns blazing. I could just do it like, talk it out sort of way. And apparently talking out sort of way like ends you up on like a bunker base on the moon. I think the main core reason though why I love this game so much is it's like one of those morality mayhem games where, I trademarking this phrase, where you can just go out there and cause some mayhem, or you can, be moral and, not. Games like Infamous or GTA or Bully, Prototype, uh, you can do just whatever you want in the city. You cause some trouble, or you can abide by the laws and, not jaywalk. Uh, Kind of make your own adventure type of deal in between the missions. And I think that's kind of, it's like Minecraft, but instead of blocks, it's like what you see, in day-to-day life. I think that's kind of really interesting and really, really fun. Right, that's enough talking about Cyberpunk. I'm probably gonna play the DLC. I started a little bit, but didn't really get too far, so I'm probably gonna do the DLC and do a different ending here pretty soon. But finally, we're gonna talk about the final game, Mario Kart World. Now, when this released, everyone got a little up in arms about a couple of things. The prize, the intermission tracks, uh, just the characters added, a lot of things made people a little frantic, I'll say. uh, but I'm gonna take it back right before the game released. Maybe even a little smidgen before that. Uh, right after Mario Kart 8 finished with all of its DLC and all of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC. And everyone was like, alright, where's Mario Kart 9? We need Mario Kart 9. And what I was saying is, Nintendo loves implementing new mechanics. We need something new that they would bring to Mario Kart. And if they can't figure out something new, then we're not gonna get a new Mario Kart. And all people kept coming up with was like the drill. You can drill underground. And I can reasonably see how they would come to that. Mario Kart 7, you could fly. Mario Kart 9, you drill. Okay, whatever. But then people started coming up with Super Smash Kart, which is like oh, we already have Link, Inkling, Isabel. Let's just throw Captain Falcon in there. Just throw Captain Olimar in there. Let's just throw Isaac from Golden Sun in there. Let's just throw Kirby in there. He was from Kirby Air Riders. You know, brand new game. Let's throw him in there. I felt like I was the only one who was like, this is Mario. It's gotta be mostly about Mario characters. You gotta draw the line in the sand somewhere. And it sounds cool, right? But it's becoming too much. It sounds like it's gonna be like Super Smash Card or something. Uh, and Nintendo ended up not doing that, which I was kind of really secretly happy about. And they were like, okay, the gimmick this time is you have to drive from one racing location to the next, and also the other gimmick is you get to play as like any Mario enemy ever, including the Moo from Moo Moo Meadows, but they're called cows now, which is kind of really bizarre. Uh, Now, I will say, if I'm nitpicking games I love, uh, this isn't really. Yeah. Well, we'll say this is more of a major nitpick. Uh, but I thought this game needed just more substance. I'm a bigger fan of a Double Dash, and that has like mirror mode, that has Shine Thief, that has uh, the balloon battle or something, bomb on blast. Uh, but in this game, it's got like this open world. You you drive around, push buttons, and then you can like collect outfits for your characters. But I felt like it needed a good mode to like tie everything together. Something like the mirror mode from Double Dash. Knockout Tour, I think, is one of my favorite parts about Mario Kart World. But again, if you take out Knockout Tour, then I'm not really sure if I would be really vibing with Mario Kart World at all. But adding it back in, it's like I feel like I pretty much, not exclusively, but mostly play Knockout Tour. I'm not sure if that's weird or not, but I really like this new mechanic of like racing from place to place, and then the losers all just stop playing. It adds the added benefit of if you're already losing, you know you really don't have a chance to catch up. It just knocks you out completely, and then you get to start a new race faster. I feel like that's kind of smart. And also, I feel like adds like a greater competitive edge onto it. So you always feel like you have to keep taking the lead more. I don't know. It sounded better in my head. Now, even though I love Knockout Tour and think it's the best part of Mario Kart World, I feel like this is a good baseline and think it's laying the groundwork that can be improved with future updates. Now, this is a great like segue into like the price point of the game and what I think of it like as a whole compared to the other Mario Kart games. Do I think this is the best Mario Kart game? I still think Mario Kart Double Dash takes that spot. With the double dash mechanic and the double items and the map selection. You know, uh, I hold a soft spot for Double Dash. You know, people apparently really like Mario Kart Wii. I haven't really spent too much time with Wii, but nonetheless, World, on the other hand, I feel like people have already given up hope that updates will come to World, or if they haven't given up hope, they think updates will come. You would have to pay for them, like a DLC type of situation. Now, where I would stand on this situation is, I think, if anything, Nintendo would put out maybe 2 free updates, and they would be like, hey, here's 200cc, here's, I don't know, like a new mode or two, and then I could see them not doing anything with the game for like 2 years, and then everyone's saying, oh man, Mario Kart World's dead, and then after 2 years they would be like, all right, paid update time, you got paid to play type deal. Would Mario Kart World be worth it then? $70 plus $20 DLC. That's hard to say. Who knows what it'll be at. I'm guessing another booster course pass type situation. Honestly, if let me step back. Honestly, the biggest you caught me ranting now. Honestly, the biggest letdown for Mario Kart World is the items. You ready? Oh, honestly, I'm not a Mario Kart aficionado, so I might say an item's new, and it might have appeared in like an SNES game, so I apologize. But they introduced like a golden shell, and it's like, okay, it makes coins, whatever. And then they introduce like a hammer, and I feel like that's just the fireball again. The shell, that's just a green shell again. Where's my quirky items? This is supposed to be Mario Kart. They invented the blue shell. And then they have like, you jump to like avoid, I guess, blue shells, and like jump on ramps. That separates like the normies from like the hardcore veteran Mario Kart players. But where's my quirky Mario Kart items? If they introduce like an update to introduce more items, I'll be all for it. Honestly, that would sell me. If they if they introduce a DLC purchasable for more items, I doubt they would, but I would be kind of bummed out. That wouldn't make any sense, and I highly doubt it, but I'll be kind of bummed out. But I guess that's my Mario Kart World rant. I, I still pretty like the game. Not as bad as people say. Pretty okay Mario Kart. Probably an update eventually. Needs to be more quirky. Cyberpunk. Go play Cyberpunk. NieR. Go play NieR. Go play Mario Kart World. You'll probably like it if you like Mario Kart. See you next episode. While I go rant about the quirkiness of Mario Kart some more to myself.